Ezekwesili, for being on the program. I would start off getting your reaction on a breaking story we just heard while we're coming for the interview today. A new video from the Boko Haram sect showing some of the Chibok girls purportedly saying that they will not be found. Some of them were with babies even. Well, what is your reaction to that report?
My reaction is that it is the responsibility of the government to give us the information concerning abducted girls. There are still 112 of them. They are citizens of Nigeria. I don't listen to any group. I listen to the government of the country. They are the ones that will authenticate whether what's out there is real. And they particularly need to tell Nigerians what the status of the rescue of the remaining 112 girls is.
What is the status of your advocacy and the advocacy of Bring Back Our Girls?
Very much so. I mean, you want to join me today? Because our daily sit-out still happens at the Unity Fountain. So, the monthly march to the Villa, we did that of December, we did in November, we did in October. And we're going to do a January march, and every day, because that's what we vowed. And we're keeping up with what we promised we would do every day. We're at the Unity Fountain.
So talking about lives and the way we move on from it, in a recent interview that you had, we were asking you about the Benue killings, and you mentioned 3 things. You said a discussion ought to be had on 3 things. You said whether the government has the capacity to solve the problem, whether the government is willing to solve the problem, and whether it's a failure generally of the nation state. In your opinion, as someone who has worked in the government previously and who continues to exert a lot of influence, which of these options do you think is most responsible, for instance, for the Middle Belt crisis presently?
I am a believer in analytical thinking, and so if you tried to look at the Benue crisis, the crisis in Nasarawa or Taraba or anywhere else that the headsman scourge has gone on, you come to the conclusion that it's probably all 3. Because the fragility index of countries puts us at the 13th most fragile nation state. That's troubling. So you can have a semblance of normalcy, but when that level of fragility is associated with you, it means that the capacity of the territory called Nigeria to be able to respond to vulnerabilities has become starkly weakened. That should worry us. Government is so called because there's a certain hegemony or monopoly of coercive apparatus that is presumed. And so it gives a sense that when government speaks, everyone knows that government has spoken. But if people can thumb their noses when government speaks, it means that the nation state has an issue. And all these 3 factors should conclude to us that there is a conversation that we need to have in order to renew the nation state.
I'm guessing it's because of these concerns that you have about capacity, willingness, and the fragility of nation states that you recently announced a political agenda, and basically the summary from what we glean of what has fast grown into a movement now is that you want both the PDP and the APC out of the way.
I don't remember which of the stations that I was listening to their news together with my husband. And at the same time, I had my phone. And so I was just steeling myself to be able to look at the pictures of the gruesome killings in Benue. I was doing that and also just listening to the news. And these 2 things were happening at the same time. Then the news came on, And the first set of things that news that the broadcaster was talking about was the Minister of Communications talking about satellite launch that they were going to do or something like that, something that had to do with satellite. And then, furthermore, the minister also spoke about on the same day, a government official of that level, of that status. So, I mean, look, you see, in 2014, when Chibok girls were abducted, the behavior of the party in government at that time and the almost nonchalant attitude to the pain of those parents and the behavior to issues of bomb explosion and people dying. Everyone seemed at that time to be caught in this euphoric agenda of retaining power was playing out again at that moment for me. And I thought, hey, I did say it to these fellows. I did say, you know, whether it is APC or PDP really does not matter to this country. If you remember, when I gave the speech where they invited me as a development expert to speak to their group when they were launching the economic blueprint, I did say it. I said, you know, the change of acronym means nothing. That the Nigerian problem is not a political party problem, it's a political class problem. And that the political class is the obstacle that we have had, and that nothing that they were presenting suggested that they fully understood that the challenge that we've had has been a challenge of the operators of our political landscape and the values that they subscribe to. I made that statement at that time. And here it was playing out on that Thursday when I did the flurry of tweets that I did on the fact that I was issuing a red card to the APC and PDP. And you know, I've heard people sort of say, why APC and PDP? And I simply say, because statistically, they represent the majority of the historical political class that has performed in a repetitive pattern of impunity, of disregard for the state of mind of the people that they're supposed to lead. The characteristics are similar. They act like Siamese twins. So what's the point in sort of not calling a spade by saying APC and PDP, you have been responsible for the state of degradation that we see right now. And therefore, in any way that you are associated with the political system, we're giving you a red card. It's time to march you off the field.
But how will you respond to people who say this campaign against the APC and the PDP is basically going to fracture votes of the opposition against the incumbent president, who many people of the view has not performed optimally? So that this third party argument is just going to fracture votes and then make him get re-election.
I hope you know that only about 53% of eligible voters voted in the 2015 elections. I hope you know that in the recent Anambra elections, only 23 or thereabouts, something less than 26% of the people that were on the vote of registers turned up to vote. So all of that political apathy, electoral apathy on the part of our people, what do you think a lot of it suggests? Is that sense that government means nothing to me. He hasn't delivered anything to me, so why should I bother? You know, so we're going to pay attention to unlocking those kinds of people. And we believe that ultimately what would happen is that the people would by themselves understand that we're saying, even concerning those who want to be the members of your House of Assembly in your state, it is now within your power as citizens to say, hey, did you say you want to go and be our representative? God forbid. We want to be able to achieve that. And ultimately, at the level where you need to build platforms that unify around these kinds of values, it would naturally emerge by itself. People are more discerning. I think that a lot of people are so caught up in the what I call the hubris of the existing political class. So they can't think, they can't shift their mindset. We want a mindset shift. And, we've started. That's what matters.
All right, well, going from your antecedents, like the Bring Back Our Girls movement, which you were part of the founders, you used to be, or you were very skittish about accepting donations, accepting funds from people.
Well, the first issue for us is not funding. Because you will be surprised how initially just being able to understanding how resources go beyond funding. There's something called partnership. It's an incredible resource. Already we have so many platforms, existing platforms of people who have been working in the field of electoral systems reforms, political systems reforms, working in a civic education field or space, who are reaching out and saying, I've been doing this in a little way. Can this be connected to what you're trying to do? So the leverage is amazing. So that gives us the kind of reach that where we don't need to be thinking of, we need to pay somebody this or that. So that's partnership is huge for us. It's a leverage resource. Second is knowledge. Knowledge is an incredible investment that saves you a lot of the things that we do in this society, running around trying to do things, when just simply harvesting, collecting, assembling the knowledge that you need can reduce what you need to do. Then the third becomes finance. Then when it comes to finance, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Do you know that there are many citizens who are saying, if you need me to just donate 1,000 to this cause, I am ready to donate it every month. There are people who are, it's amazing. The reaction is amazing. So I don't worry myself in terms of the strategy, because I don't do anything that is not knowledge-based and anything that is not driven by analytics, as I said. So we are being structured. We're working on all of that, trying to make sure that we can maximize the opportunity to get the citizens' mind shift that we need. If you ask, so if you said, what's the simple objective that you would want to achieve with this? It's simple. Citizens getting to the point where they are saying, if you present yourself to lead me, I need a set of minimum standard of what content of character, competence, and capacity you should have. And if you don't have it, it's my red card you're going to get. And it is whoever would have it that I would flash my green card, being my PVC, my permanent voter's card.
I'm going to get back to what you just said now, but I needed to ask, in terms of the structure and strategy that you've made clear that some thinking is going on right now, any idea of how soon we could get like a clearer direction?
Oh my God, by next week.
Okay.
By next week.
Okay, but then, if we go deeper into what you've said now, you said citizens would decide that, look, we've had enough of this. We want to see a minimum level of integrity or character in these candidates, or maybe competence as well.
Why did you say maybe competence as well?
Yeah, because you didn't mention it. So
I did. I said content of character, competence, and capacity.
Okay, so competence and capacity inclusive. So with all of this, knowing the level of education, you're huge on knowledge and all of that. You get worried sometimes that it's beyond that, and it's a systemic problem in this country that just look at your advocacy sometimes. Today, if you're speaking on this particular topic, you have a certain number of people on your side, and then tomorrow those same people could be against you when it doesn't favor them. So do you think sometimes that beyond the APC, beyond the PDP and people who people those places, that the average Nigerian has issues around character, integrity, and the system has so worked people's minds that right now it's very, very difficult to find the kind of people who you seem to be looking for?
It's a very interesting question that you've asked. And there are no easy answers to that. But the first thing that I would like to discountenance is the fallacy of a generally distorted people. We're not. If we sort of said Nigerians are generally distorted, we would do a lot of disservice to many that are not seen, but who in their little corners have been holding the candle and saying, I don't subscribe to the dominant values that I'm beginning to see, because these values are vices, and I don't believe in these vices. So there are those quiet people that we don't see, who cry, who agonize, that somehow we have found in our public space a normalization of everything that is aberrant. So don't generalize no matter what. The temptations are there, but don't. We're not all distorted. Then number two thing to say is that, is it a system thing? Systems are not artificial creation. Systems emerge from the values that people hold. So what makes system to emerge is that your ethos, your beliefs, your convictions, your ethics that emerge from your ethos, from your values, lead you to organizing frameworks for how you would deal with certain situations. So you organize those set of principles and they grow into what you call systems. So procedures and processes, the way of doing things in an organized, rhythmic manner. If that is what we define as systems, then what has happened is that our dominant vices, not values, have so become corrosive that even in building the organizing principles, they are immediately badly configured. They will not work because our values are in discordance with what we assume we're putting in place. That's why you hear people say, it's not the law that is the problem, it's the enforcement of the law. Is it because we don't have enough technical people in the field of law? Is it because we don't have the kinds of people trained to be the vanguards of the justice system? It's not. It's because this whole consciousness of a normalized a normalized abnormality context is destroying the system. So what then do you do when you have systemic corruption or a systemic collapse of values? You start from little things. That's what we identified. As a matter of fact, it was when I was a very young professional and I was part of Transparency International, and we had to have these kinds of discussion. What do you do when the entire system is engulfed in wrongdoing, in bad conduct, in impunity? What do you do? And we, through basic research over and over, studying, where things have been like that and what was the trigger of change, we then realized that if you could even find a little candlelight, it was a good place to start. Which but as I got deeper in the knowledge of the Bible, then I realized, oh my God, that's really what the Bible says. That just that flicker of light is enough. So never ever give up on that system. So what we are trying to do may appear to be, in fact, sometimes in the last maybe 10 days, it's probably 10 days already. Yes, about 10 days since I did those tweets, and they caught on social media. There have been times when I sort of thought, maybe we're even silly. maybe our heads are not even correct in assuming that this would make any difference, as Nigerians would say. But hey, who wants to not challenge the status quo? We should challenge.
Well, how do you, when you have those doubts in those moments, how do you make that switch?
How I make the switch? Strength of character from the Almighty. Strength of character from the Almighty. I just totally believe in the fact that we must be bold. We must be bold to challenge evil. That we can't be in a society where we all become eunuchs. We simply look at evil and we say, please, oh, no. For as long as there is the Almighty, I will not sit and watch evil. I was known when I was in government. In the government that I served, they called me saboteur. Why did they call me saboteur? Because I was doing due process. They said, oh, this woman is here to frustrate the development agenda of our party. It was a lie. They all wanted to continue with the pattern of pilfering the public treasury through bogus contracts. And so here I came saying we're entrenching due process and we're going to do global standards of the way that you do public procurement. And they're thinking, what is this? And then we designed the program, began to run the program, and as soon as it began to affect them, you know what would happen? They would say, if you spoke to a minister in those days, the minister would say, I can't do anything for you. It's that woman that is doing her due process. So I became the most hated person in government because access to public contracts was where the vulnerability was at its highest before we started the due process mechanism. So what is different? They abused me at the time I was in government. They have abused me in the administration that came before, and the one that came after it, and the one that followed the one that came after it. And now they are abusing me in this one. What is different? What is new? That's why sometimes when I look at the ones who abuse me, I say, if you're young enough to have critical thinking and you've not sort of said to yourself, this woman, these are abuse, no, they do anything to her. You so let's just leave this woman to do her own, let her do her advocacy, because while they are doing their own, there must be people who are saying, we do not subscribe. If the idea in this society is for everybody to be silent, is for everybody to be indifferent, that's not a good bargain. I am not going for it. My voice will be out there. My voice was in the government that I was in. I was known.
Right, so final two questions. First, how do you respond to people who say, how do you respond to people who say that you supported the current administration in terms of you voted or you asked people to vote for?
Ask people, did you ever say anything where Oby Ezekwesili asked people to vote for this administration?
Personally, no.
Well, so as a journalist, you can't ask me a question that's not substantiated. Did you ever, Oby Ezekwesili, those people would come to BBOG gathering and want to say, Jonathan, and I would say, stop it. Our leader of this country remains President Jonathan. We can call his attention to the failure to do justice, to give justice to these girls without disparaging him. So all of the kinds of things that people throw at me, it's okay. It's a lie. So when people lie, it doesn't even touch my skin.
You recently launched this movement that is fast gaining ground, especially on social media, the Red Card movement. You're basically saying no to the PDP and no to the APC. Please tell us a bit more about that, what you intend to achieve with that.
So I really didn't launch this movement. I think the movement launched itself. All I did was to express my complete dissatisfaction with the political landscape and the repetitive pattern of failure that we have seen. That Thursday was, for me, like the apogee of having to just watch the kind of disconnect and deep gulf in empathy for citizens that has been a source of great pain to me in the last many years of watching people killed and the response from government not being as wholesome as it should be. I remember when the Sosoliso crash that took away the lives of some school children happened. I wasn't even a minister. I was head of the due process, but I was a cabinet member by virtue of that position. And when that tragedy happened, I felt so personally connected to the pain. Because I thought to myself, how would it be to have sent a child off to school and then the child just dies because there was an air crash, fire broke out, and they couldn't be saved? I put myself on the plane and went to Port Harcourt to see some of the families. It was me understanding that as someone who was in government, there still needed to be that connection to pain. So watching incident after incident, tragedy after tragedy, and waiting to see a level of engagement, that kind of engagement that says, I may not be able to bring back the people that are dead, but listen, I care. I was tired of not saying it. And that Thursday, what triggered my tweets was that at the same time as I was looking at the pictures, I had to steel myself to look at those pictures. And as I was looking at those pictures, at the same time, my ear was listening to the news on television. And the news item came up where the Minister of Communication, a certain Mr. Chitu, was being quoted first after talking of some satellite launch they were planning or something like that. And then the next thing, and by the way, he's leading the dynamic group for the re-election of President Buhari because President Buhari must be re-elected. And I'm thinking, they would even talk about re-election on a day like this? You will recall that I had been very vocal when the president went on a visit to Kano and was quoted in the media as having said, that he knows that for 2019 he has the people of Kano in his pocket. I was like, please, is this the most important thing to be saying? Where are the results that should be delivered to the Nigerian people for the current mandate that you have? So all of these just sort of was, okay, I had it. I'm going to put my voice out there and say, as for me, I'm a single individual. Let it be known that it's a red card to our political class. The same pattern of behavior that I saw in the administration that preceded this one is what I'm saying now. So I am giving both of you red card, both PDP and APC. Here is my own red card. I don't have power over what any other person chooses to do. But as for me, as a citizen of Nigeria, who's got certain ideas of how government should function, what government should be, what it should deliver, it's a red card to our political class. And I said, in lifting my red card, an important thing that I must underline is that there is something called the office of the citizen, and that my 2018 would be the year of the office of the citizen. And I would spend a lot of my time out of my professional activities doing the advocacy for the office of the citizen. And the key part of that activity would be raising the political consciousness of the citizens to know that they can determine the quality of the people that govern. Because, I mean, look at it this way. Lee Kuan Yew is regarded, highly regarded, as one of the best leaders that any country has produced. The same man said in one of his statements that without quality leadership, no country has the possibility of becoming great. But he was simply saying something that research has proven. Research has shown that poor governance is an obstacle to development. If you even dealt with infrastructure, dealt with, other things, and you have poor governance, development is elusive. So since all we've known has been poor governance, governance failure, I decided that the predominant parties, or rather the parties with the dominant collection of politicians in this country, are the two major parties, APC and PDP. So red card, match of the field to APC, red card, match of the field to PDP. And then many people said, me too, I want to wave my own red card to them. So you saw the tweets. People began to say, I'm waving my red card. So that's how movement. There was nothing like launching a movement. I didn't sort of sit down and deliberate. No, none of that happened. And so as I put up my red card, and I thought, okay, there's an instrument for giving a green card, right? A green card saying, okay, you can come in. This is our PVC. It's the permanent voters card. With this, any citizen of eligible age to vote in our democracy can define and redefine the quality of leadership. So my red card, my PVC.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. We'll be keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that such a time comes around. Thank you very much, Dr. Ezekwesili, for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.